Hello and welcome to Abe's Star Trek podcast, where I review and commentate on anything and everything live action Star Trek. Where today I'll be discussing and reviewing the original series episode number 23 on Netflix, Space Seed, which, as any Trekkie worth their salt should know, is the precursor episode to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And it's Khan's 23rd century or 24th century debut, if you will. It's been a while since I have watched this episode. I know I do quite enjoy it. There's a lot of meat in this episode for me to go over. It may be one of my longer podcasts, and I do appreciate all those who have stuck with me even through the breaks that I've had. I know I've tried to do say one or two a week or some of that, but I know that hasn't necessarily been the outcome of what's happened here or the reality of what's happened. But I do appreciate those who are continuing to listen and watch these podcasts that I'm putting up on YouTube. And as a reminder, could you please like, comment, and subscribe? Those things that you have been enjoying, facts or comments or behind the scenes stuff that you may know that I haven't included in here, which I freely admit would be a fair amount, more than likely. But yeah, so for now, let's get into the episode and see how Khan makes his arrival. Okay, so the episode begins with on the bridge of the Enterprise. They are approaching an old Earth ship, and I do like the little bit of banter between Spock and Kirk at the beginning. I fail to understand why it gives you so much pleasure to see me proven wrong, says Spock. And Kirk, an old Earth weakness of mine. Um, yeah, I appreciate that. It's kind of a little amusing, but anyway, the thing which I find interesting is they find that the ship it's an old Earth ship, which they weren't expecting to find this far away from Earth, obviously, and a ship that was built several hundred years ago, back in the 1990s, or several hundred years ago from their perspective, um, and that there are very faint life signs happening on there. McCoy doesn't think they could be human because of how low the heartbeats are. That there is some equipment functioning, and for reasons that I don't quite understand, Kirk goes to red alert against this really old, non-threatening ship. I personally don't get it, because it's not like there's lifelines on there, but the line that's coming to mind is, if any of you have listened to that old parody on Star Trek music song by Sirius firm Star Trekkin' Across the Universe, I'm reminded of the verse from that. We come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill, men. Because it seems to be that's what Kirk is proposing to do here. At least that's what it looks like. So the Enterprise pulls up alongside, and when they realize that there's still no threat from from the ship, which there wouldn't be anyway, Kirk orders the ship essentially to yellow alert for all intents and purposes. And Spock then reports that he's managed to find the name of the ship, the SS Botany Bay, but there's no record of that ship ever being launched or whatever from Earth. And we find out that that the ship was launched during the 1990s, during the third or the last of the World Wars, at least according to Star Trek timeline, otherwise known as the Eugenics Wars, where a group of scientists tried to improve the race through selective breeding. As a bit of a side note, which I will point out, there are two really good books based on by Greg Cox, which for those of you who haven't read them yet, I would strongly suggest you do, because it gives a really good, kind of history of the eugenics wars, Khan's role in them, and so on. And I will discuss that a bit more towards the end of the end of the podcast as well. But just want to throw a little plug in there because due to the eugenics wars mentioned at this point. Kirk orders the ship to be towed and orders McCoy, Scotty, and the historian Ensign MacGyvers to join the landing party to go across the ship and see what's going on. Okay, so the away team beams over to the Botany Bay, and just beforehand we get, I think this may be the first time that McCoy makes a bit of a comment that he doesn't like to use the transporters. I joined Starfleet to be a doctor, not to have my atoms beamed across space by this gadget. But anyway, they beam over and they realize that they confirm it's an old Earth ship, atomic power, transistors and whatnot. And MacGyver points out that it's a sleeper ship that from the 90s to about the year 2018. It was the only way to really travel between solar systems and whatnot because it would take years to do so using the methods of transport they had at the time. Which, given other Star Trek timeline events, would make sense. Things which haven't yet been confirmed as far as the original series are concerned, but have been confirmed, and I will bring in big picture here for a minute. 2063 being when First Contact happened, which completely blows out everything that we're talking now. Actually, no, it doesn't. I take that particular last bit back. Because it's quite possible that there were Earthships that had to travel. Because First Contact was achieved because that's when warp drive was first detected by the Vulcans, and the first warp travel from Earth by Zefram Cochrane. But this is an old Earthship which didn't have warp drive, so it still doesn't muck up that timeline. But I'm just wondering what happened in around 2018, so 7 years ago from my time now, from reality versus Trek timeline, to help us travel in some form of faster method between planets. I wonder, because that never really gets stated, but point of interest anyway. If anyone has any ideas as to what that would have been, I'm more than happy for them to be posted in the comments or to kind of let me know on that one. But anyway, Scotty's still doing some work on the control panels over there and starts to get life support properly back online. And MacGyver points out that it's quite remarkable these people survived as long as they have, and that it's quite a handsome group of people. So, yeah. So, and looking at one of the specimens, they see that one of them is beginning to be revived. The revival process doesn't quite go as planned, and he almost dies. They realize that he's the leader, and Marla MacGyver, the historian, says that it's probably an Indian or a Sikh, Sikh, who is and the people from that region were fantastic warriors at the time, and that as the leader he would most likely been set to revive first to determine the safety of the environment for to determine if the others could be, if it was safe for the others to be revived as well. They managed to save him, and let's see what happens next. So, the very first question that the leader, who for the moment, although we all know who he is, shall remain nameless, asks is how long, has he been sleeping? And Kirk tells him it's been about 200 years, give or take. And then he orders McCoy to beam back with him to make sure that he is all okay. Kirk and beams back with and there's a team of engineers and medical professionals who have gone over there to repair the vessel, see if the others can be awakened and whatnot. Although they are waiting to see if I'll call him the leader for now. I'll stop using his name at least for the moment. To see whether or not he can be properly revived and survive. And McCoy is highly surprised at how well he's able to recuperate. But given the fact that he is a genetic Superman, or at least from that era, so it's a safe assumption to make at this point, that it's not too surprising that he's able to heal relatively well and quickly. Scotty's still over there and gives Kirk the overall numbers of survivors. That there's 72 people, 42 men, 30 women. And let's keep going. So upon hearing those numbers, Kirk and Spock, we have a little bit of an exposition bit here. And I got to agree with different parts. It's a good conversation to dissect a little bit because Kirk is thinking that there's a great deal about that history that we don't know, and Spock is thinking, it was a pretty bad time for your people being humans, and that being an older ship, or at least one of their most advanced ships at the time, that if it was a penal ship, as Kirk is supposing, owing to the name Botany Bay, being the name of a old Australian/English penal colony, Spock doesn't think that it makes sense to exile criminals using one of Earth's most advanced starships at the time, particularly a ship that had such, because of the kind of ship that it was unlikely to make it to another planet, let alone another solar system. And so what would be the point? And I can't disagree with either side on this one. What would be, and also why would there be no record of the trip? If you're going to keep, chuck some criminals off the planet into space, wouldn't you want to keep a record of that somewhere, somehow, so that, avoid, kind of like a warning beacon or something, evil ship, stay away, kind of thing. But apparently none of that happened. Okay, so Spock says that essentially the remaining part of the conversation between Kirk and Spock there is that I've got insufficient facts to make a theory of my own at this point. And that's that essentially for now. Kirk goes down to sickbay and sees that this mysterious person is most likely going to survive, that he is, and McCoy is confirming that he is a superior being of some kind, a superior human, greater lung capacity, greater physical strength, greater this, greater that, and makes the comment that, he wonders if his brain matches his body, something which is going to be an interesting point of conversation for later in the episode too, I believe. And I have to stand corrected, I called her Ensign MacGyver, this is Lieutenant MacGyver's, but she comes into sickbay. She is obviously enamored by him, even though he hasn't said or done anything at this point yet. He's just been an unconscious, I won't deny, quite attractive, I would assume. I'm being a male myself, I don't know how to judge, but an attractive male. And I'm wondering if, in addition to the various other parts of him that have been enhanced, if there's also some kind of enhanced pheromone, making him seem more attractive to the fairer sex, possibly. It's certainly a thought. But she's obviously pleased that he's going to survive. I'm guessing that this is going to be partially due to her fascination with the early 20th century, that she's specialized in, or at least partially, if not the physical, in addition to the physical attraction that she's obviously experiencing as well. The next part I find to be so damn hypocritical of Kirk, because he pulls Lieutenant MacGyver's aside and says that because the fate of the Enterprise may rest on the shoulders of any one crewman or crew person aboard, and that who knows what could have happened because you were distracted by this good-looking man. And she said it wasn't physical attraction, it was professional, and because he's from that era, and because I'm a historian from that era, that I'm just really fascinated by what he could tell me. And Kirk appreciates the honesty and lets her go. But the bit that I'm finding so hypocritical is, really, have you never been on an away team, seen an attractive woman, and made a beeline for her? Really, Jim? I mean, come on. And the fact that, and McCoy's next line, it's a shame that you wasted your talents on command. You would have made a fair psychologist. I'm so rolling my eyes at this bit. But anyway, moving on. So the leader awakens, does some stretching up kind of things just to kind of get the fogginess away from his head, looks around the room, sees a sharp, I'm assuming some older surgical instruments, grabs one knife-like, lies back in bed. McCoy comes into the room, and he starts to threaten McCoy, choking, hand around his throat, knife to it. And I gotta admit, McCoy does pretty well, staying sane in that instance, and says, either choke me or cut my throat. Take your pick. But eventually, the leader just wants to know where he is at this point, and eventually he lets McCoy go so that he can have a proper conversation. A couple of continuity technical issues that I have with what happens next. Firstly, McCoy tells him that he's on the Enterprise, and confirms that he's apparently been in space or sleeping for about 200 years. And then he asks for the captain to come down because he's got many questions. Now, it's only been, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, since Kirk left sickbay. And unless sickbay is on deck 2, right below the bridge, which I know is not the case. It's been a while since I've seen a layout of the Enterprise, but I know that it's somewhere in the middle. And again, someone feel free to help me out on that one. But McCoy, pushes the communication thing, and without saying who he's trying to contact or anything, it's just straight up push the button, and it's automatic to the bridge where Kirk apparently has managed to get to pretty damn quick. Where he tells Kirk that guys awake and he's got questions. So technical issues, but yeah, they happen. It's a 60s show, get over it. Now, this initial exchange between Kirk and the person that will identify himself as Khan is very interesting. So, before he identifies himself, he asks Kirk a couple of questions, being, where are we going and how many of my people have survived? To which Kirk says, well, we're going to Starbase 12, our command base in this sector, and we'll revive the 72 of your people who have survived when we get there, in a nutshell. And then when Kirk starts to question him, Khan, I am certain, is faking fatigue. And so that he doesn't, so that he can gather information but not give it, beyond, his first name, or his only name as far as Kirk knows at this point. And I gotta admit, Khan is very strategic in his thinking, in that, and he then asked Kirk, you can at least give me some technical manuals to read. I used to be an engineer back in my day. And Kirk agrees, well, you've got 200 years of catch-up learning to do, so not a problem. And yeah. So Kirk, tells him that McCoy will show him how to access the computer library in order to get the information that he's needing. So Kirk goes to the bridge and discusses his conversation with Khan with Spock, and a couple of interesting things. They don't. We get a bit more information about how the eugenics wars went, and that they're about, and that a group of these supermen, or these genetically engineered people, whatever you want to call them, genetically breeded people, seized control in over 40 nations, and that when they were finally overthrown, there were some 80 or 90 of them that were unaccounted for when that happened. And it's an assumption now that they that this is the group that's they've now got on them. And although that particular fact, the fact that there were, I'll call it 100 just for easiness sake, people that were unaccounted for, was not in the history text. Now, part one to my question is how the heck did Spock find out that information at that point? If it's not in any history book, then where did he get it? But wouldn't it also then make Kirk a bit more cautious in terms of who he's let aboard and who they're actually dealing with on that on the Botany Bay? So Lieutenant MacGyver goes to visit him now, and we get to see a little bit of the controlling side of Khan here, because when she comes in, she's trying to remain professional, to try and get some answers out of him, historical type, purposes, his trip and about his time. He's not wanting to talk about that, understandably so, given what we suspect about him at this point. And he starts to manipulate her a little bit by loosening her hair soft and simple. But obviously there's more to that manipulation, as we shall see. Okay, so next thing we see is that formal dinner has been arranged at the invitation of Lieutenant MacGyver to welcome Khan to the Century. And Kirk is understandably a little bit concerned about the level of control that Khan seems to have over her. We then go to MacGyver's quarters, where Khan meets up with her, sees that she's quite the artist, and is fascinated by, interestingly, warlords of the past. So Napoleon, Leif, Flavius, the Gladiator, and several others, and also started doing a painting of him, to which he is flattered and honoured, etc. And she, and then he also points out that she changed her hair for him as well, and that there's an obvious attraction between them, and that she should be understandably cautious, because such men, warlords and whatnot, do tend to take what they want, and that has most definitely included rape of women and people that they've wanted. But and Khan and MacGyver then share quite a passionate makeout session before heading to the dinner. So here's where we get a bit of idea on how different perspectives affect things. So Spock initially is talking to Khan about how the rules, the leadership at the time was, or the whole war at the time was to overthrow tyranny. And Khan is like, no, that's not the way it was. We were trying to unite the world. And Kirk uses the analogy like, a group of animals under one whip. And, Khan then makes also states that, one man would have led eventually, which is a safe assumption he meant that to be him. And he then points out that this whole conversation has been very cleverly and tactically run, with Spock, the second in command, leading the attack, while Kirk sits back and watches for weakness, and that social occasions are only warfare concealed. Something which in some circles I don't disagree with, because oftentimes diplomacy and social diplomacy is, as in many an occasion, been a cover to gather information, to plant seeds of doubt, and in one ally to or one enemy to another, one ally to another, or however you want to look at it. And oftentimes, things that people say often have more than one meaning than just bald out, just a straight out yes or no, sir, or whatever it may be. So Khan is not wrong in that particular assumption or that particular comment. So Khan again feigns fatigue and returns to his quarters. And this next scene I have got so many problems with, it's not funny. He's returned to his quarters. MacGyver finds him there a few minutes later, and tries to apologise. And Khan starts to assert his manipulative control over her rather drastically and dramatically, saying, go or stay, but do it because it's what you wish to do. Then you need to ask to stay because you're not entertaining me anymore. And then when she asks to stay, he starts to crush her hand. And we start to get into a situation of a combination of what I would call domestic violence as well as battered wife syndrome to a point, because she is so enamored by him that she is willing to suffer this kind of physical abuse, and yet turn traitor to her own crew. Unwillingly at first, because when Khan says, I intend to take this ship, will you help me? She kind of begs, don't make me help you, don't make me do this. But she's not saying no, and eventually she acquiesces and she agrees to help him, with a promise that he's not going to hurt anyone. But I mean, please, given the fact that he's already started to hurt you, what makes you think that he's not going to do worse to anyone else? So I really have got both some sympathy and some outright forehead slapness and other things, other emotions kind of going on as to what the hell is MacGyver's doing at this point. But it's really not a good situation. Next bit is just after Lieutenant MacGyver's agrees to do whatever Khan asks. Again, something which I find very troubling, but anyway, is a conference between Kirk, McCoy, Spock, and Scotty, so basically the command crew, where Khan's identity has been found out, Khan Noonian Singh, and that he was a ruthless dictator of all of Asia and the Middle East, so basically a quarter of the planet, and that he was the last of the tyrants to be overthrown in the eugenics wars. It messes up the timeline in the episode slightly because apparently the Botany Bay was launched in the early 90s, but it's actually the late 90s that we're talking that he was overthrown, and so he would have had to have been, so it would have been 1996 or sometime shortly thereafter that the ship left, so minor issue, but I'll overlook that. And Kirk then, and I do agree with Spock that, or with parts of the conversation, that it is possible to admire some of the things that these bad guys have done, while still being against their overall methods. So unifying humanity, sure. And trying to improve humanity to a point, I agree with that. Trying to forcefully do it, no. It has to be by choice. And that is something that was very critically, taken away under those years. Kirk orders a security placed on Khan's quarters, but given who they're dealing with, I'd strongly suggest at least 10 guards, maybe, fully armed, outside his door. Given the fact you're dealing with an ancient Napoleon or Hitler, essentially. But also the fact that they've now got a wolf in sheep's clothing in MacGyver's, it's that they don't know about yet, it's going to be interesting to see what her role actually is and how this actually plays out. So we now get a bit of a more honest conversation between Kirk and Khan. Khan is saying that they left to try and find a new world, new life, because they weren't welcome on Earth anymore. Kirk lays some of his cards on the table that he knows who Khan is, Khan Noonian Singh, which clearly identifies the reason why his room has been locked and there's a guard outside. And Khan reveals as well that, let's slip, we will do very well in your century. I can't disagree to a point with one thing that Khan says, and that it's while there has been technical advancement over the years, that humanity itself hasn't changed. Let's just say I've got some mixed feelings on that one. I mean, at this point, as far as in the Star Trek world is concerned, there's not much that has been revealed about humanity itself, other than the fact that that they do seem to be a unified people. They are working together with other races to a point, although there are still wars and stuff between them. We haven't met too many other races at this point, but the other ones we have met, it's kind of been a mixed bag. So there is still that aspect to us. But Kirk also realizes that Khan is planning to release his other people. He's not quite sure how it's going to happen, and he realizes the danger of such a thing happening. And so Kirk leaves, and we see that it's only one guard posted on the door, which I'm thinking, wow, you got Hitler in there and you're only putting one guy on him? No. Bad idea. Let's see how Khan takes advantage. So, as suspected, Khan, with very little effort and a little help from Lieutenant MacGyver's, escapes from his quarters, knocks out the guard, takes a couple of weapons, and beams over to the Botany Bay to wake his crew. And let the chaos begin. So, a few moments later, security reports that Khan has escaped from his quarters, and essentially, just to speed up this next few bits, is taking control of the ships from engineering, knocked out Scotty, and is cutting off life support to the bridge so that everyone falls unconscious, and it's like, surrender to me or everyone dies. Well, there's a big fat shock for letting Hitler loose on your ship, dude. So I will nickname him, but yeah. Oh, and I'm still wondering what MacGyver is thinking about this, considering that 2 people got injured with Khan getting from his quarters to the transporter room. And now that the bridge crew are at high risk, this is so not you won't harm anyone, will you? Please. So after everyone falls unconscious, everyone on the bridge, with the exception of the captain, is revived, I guess, in the briefing room under the hostage auspices, if you will, of Khan and his crew, or his people, whatever you want to call them. And he's saying, look, if you join me, I'll let you live, I'll treat you well, etc. And they're wondering where the captain is. Or initially resists, kind of following any orders of Khan, even one as simple to engage the viewing screen, which in the end ends up showing where Kirk is, which I'll get to in a second. Joaquin beats her a little bit, to which Marla MacGyver says, stop, don't do that anymore. But eventually the screen gets put on, and we see that Kirk is actually in a decompression chamber, which, when it reaches its lowest point, will kill him. After a short time, a human can't survive. It's kind of like a person going deep underwater and coming straight up too quickly. Kind of gets the bends, and blood vessels can explode and all those kinds of fun things. So it's not a pleasant death that Khan is trying to give Kirk either. Not that Star Trek would ever show anything that bloody. Yet. Give or take a few series. But still. And Khan is eventually saying, Spock, if you join me, I'll save him. Spock knows that Kirk would rather die than risk Khan's tyranny coming back. So ultimately says no. And let's continue. So MacGyver says, I don't have actually take a step back. Khan says, that each of you will go in there. You'll each have to watch each other die. All it takes will be one person to join me, and I'll save you all. MacGyver is having a bit much of this, and so Khan lets her leave. And says, we'll take Spock in there next. Because not too long later, they lose the picture to the decom chamber. And Khan thinks that Kirk is dead by now. MacGyver has gone, to the decom chamber and uses what has got to be an extremely powerful sedative to knock out the guard that's there, and frees the captain. After saving Kirk, she makes a request saying that because I saved your life, don't kill Khan. Something which I think, wow, still. Spock comes in, and they both, Kirk and Spock together, knock out Joaquin, and Spock says there's an intruder control circuit down the corridor, and so they flood practically the whole ship with an Neurozine gas to knock everyone out. Just as the gas starts to get into the briefing room, and Khan is realizing that he's starting to lose control of the ship, he runs out of there. Something which I find rather hilarious, because a leader who's supposed to kind of fight and die with his people is the first to run and leave as people to their fate. So, yeah, good on you. You really chose a good one to stick by you. But Scotty manages to get out just as the gas is coming in too. Although he's dosed with an ovid that, it may take him a little longer to be knocked out, he gets knocked out anyway. And Kirk finds out that the gas managed to get everywhere except engineering, which is where Khan obviously is. And now we get a pretty cool hand-to-hand fight between Khan and Kirk. So let's just enjoy the show. Okay, and so just a few things to wrap this up, and to end off the episode. Khan sets the warp core on an overload, which Kirk ends up having to knock Khan out with a pipe of some kind before he's able to stop that. And they end up retaking the ship. There's a hearing between Khan, MacGyver's, and the command crew of the Enterprise. Kirk says that all the charges and specifications have been dropped, and offers to drop Khan off on a nearby planet, SETI Alpha 5, which is a harsh world but livable, survivable, and gives Lieutenant MacGyver's the choice of accompanying Khan or facing court-martial. She agrees to go with Khan, or decides to go with Khan, and it ends up with a quote from Milton: "It's better to rule in hell than serve in heaven." And with an observation, it would be interesting to come back to that world in 100 years and see what crop had sprung from the seed that has been planted here today. Something which we do get to find out in about 20 years, give or take. But I'll discuss that when I get to the movies. However, overall, an entertaining episode. It does have some things. It does give rise to several things. Superior skill breeds superior ambition. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and various other platitudes. It also gives a bit more of a history of the Star Trek timeline and how things have occurred for them, and it's interesting to compare that timeline with reality, which at this point mirroring in some ways, and also quite far from others. Fortunately, there are no tyrants of the same level as Khan. Don't get me wrong, there are some really not good guys out there at this point, but certainly none that have taken over that vast an area or had that much of a control over the planet. But still, definitely an entertaining episode and a good kind of launching pad for the second Star Trek movie, which, as I said, I will discuss when I get there. Still, for all those that have enjoyed listening to me today and that have sat through this podcast, I appreciate it. Once again, I will ask that you, like and comment and subscribe to my channel. Live long and prosper, and Kapla.